All right, welcome back to the show. Appreciate everyone listening. Today I've got my buddy Collin Schwartz. We are in a high-level mastermind together, real estate mastermind together, and kind of hit it off a little bit last retreat we had. I'm interested in getting to know him better and knowing his background a little bit more, so I'm excited for this show. Collin, welcome to the show. Why don't you give us just a 20-second introduction, and then we'll dive into your story.
What's up, brother? Thanks for having me on. Okay, 20-second introduction. I live in Omaha, Nebraska, married to my wife, Emily, going on 11 years, have 3 kids, specialize in multifamily assets. I guess you could call me a syndicator, although we do JV projects. We have about 2,400 rental units, approaching $250 million in value. We have a hard money lending business or a private money lending business that has about $17 million out right now. We've done close to 400 loans over the past 4 years. Run a large real estate meetup group out here, close to 6,000 members.
Wow.
Yeah, man, that's me, man.
I want to dive into all that.
All right, let's do it, man.
What's that?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Obviously a large portfolio, a pretty significant amount of money out on the streets with hard money lending, and 6,000 people in your meetup group. So let's get into it. Where, I guess, did you go to college? What'd you do after high school? How'd that look?
I went to a lot of colleges, not for the right reason. So moved around a bunch when I was a kid, but my parents moved out to Belen, New Mexico. You can look it up on a map. It's got some wonderful statistics. That's a joke. Graduated from Belen High School in 2003, went to college, lost all my scholarships. I was basically a straight A student, but was not prepared for adulthood in the real world. So lost all my scholarships the first semester. Went to community college, kind of played around there, but I always had a really good work ethic. I've always had a job since, I guess my first business was when I was 6 years old. It was Crazy Collin's Cupcake Corner. I thought lemonade stands were stupid, and that I could sell slushies and charge 6 times as much. And that's what I did. And I sold cupcakes, other things. When I was in 5th grade, I started wholesaling candy until I almost got expelled because, I got ratted out and the vending machines weren't making any money because I was undercutting them. But had a lot of different jobs, moved out to Nebraska in 2007 after I finished my bachelor's degree finally at 23 or so. Started working a lot of different jobs, started working retail at a grocery chain. Thought I was going to become a grocery store manager. They actually have really good stock options, really good options for pay, but I did not want to continue spending 70 hours a week at a grocery store. During that time, I got my master's degree. And said, man, I'm going to go do this 9-to-5 life. I'm going to make it big. Got a corporate job, and I knew the first day I got my corporate job that I was going to hate it. I sat down in a cubicle, and I would say every day was probably an hour's worth of work. Kept getting promoted. I remember they had it was slated for a 2-year-long project, and in 6 weeks, I completed 90% of it. And my boss said, well, you're going to need to slow down. But really, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs have this. So we didn't come for money. My parents didn't buy their first house until they were 50 years old, and it was a $109,000 home. I think they got into it with 0 down. So I knew nothing about entrepreneurship. Parents weren't entrepreneurs, didn't really have a background of it. But January 1st, 2017, I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It was the last day I was on vacation with my wife. And I remember it. I was reading it at night, and it just hit me so hard, like really hard, of like, man, I am never going to get to where I want to be doing what I'm doing. Fast forward 3 days later, back at work, which happened to be my birthday. Boss calls me in, and boss was a really good friend. He was my workout partner, but he was taking orders from his bosses. And they said, Collin, you can no longer take unpaid time off. So I would take this additional time off because I had a consulting job on the side, try to make some extra money. I also found out I was having my second child. So I got kind of hit with this storm of like, I literally can't take time off when I'm not getting paid. So I'm like, okay, now this is, I'm not going to use a form of slavery, but it is a form of indentured servitude. Mm-hmm. Within the next hour after this happens, all my employees gathered around a gentleman's desk who was 30 years my senior, been at the company for 30 years. He has a countdown timer on his desk and it says 1,000 days, 1,000 days. And everybody's celebrating. Wow, that's great. You're going to be retired in 1,000 days. And I just I knew the thought going through everybody's head, and especially that individual, was if he could press that button, he would get rid of the next 1,000 days to not have to live his life for the next 1,000 days so he could be retired. And I immediately knew I had to do something different. It was basically just the world just kind of coming down on me. So I started self-educating, read everything I could, just, you fuck around and you find out. And this was before that was a thing. And I picked up every book I could on real estate, on business, on entrepreneurship. I started asking everybody I knew who the smartest person they knew was. And then I'd reach out to them and I'd ask if they knew anybody that was in real estate. And I knew I wanted to get into multifamily. The reason being is just I saw it as less risk. Four units, one of them goes vacant, you're at least paying your mortgage. I didn't have a lot of extra capital to be able to sit there, flip houses. I didn't understand, borrowing hard money, but I did have equity in my home. So this is why my wife's my hero, lets me, take a lien on her house to get to free up some equity. I started speaking to every banker I could in town. I put together, and I recommend everybody to do this. We're so ingrained of having a resume, but what I created was something more of a future vision, but also showing my past self. So talk about my experience, but also talk about my goals and the projects I was looking at, and give a pro forma of, maybe a property that's on the market and how I would want to run it, so that when I did find a property, I already knew what I could borrow at. I already had the lender's pre-approval, so I could go out there and make offers confidently, because I knew that I was basically disadvantaged in every which way. I did not have any connections. I didn't have any experience, and I needed to be first and fast. So I'm calling around to agents all the time. So I didn't take a lunch break for a year. Every lunch, I would walk properties. I'd call 4 rent signs looking for the owners that wanted to sell. I'd call 4 sale signs seeing if they wanted to sell, and I'd call agents. Well, I kept getting the same thing as basically, especially when talking to agents, they were saying, I'd say, hey, I'm looking for an 8 cap property, 10 to 12% cash on cash returns, blah, blah, blah. They're like, good luck, bud, you and everybody else. And everybody else has actually done deals, and I'm not going to waste my time on you. And that's basically what they said. So me just, being myself, said, F it, I'm going to go and I'm going to figure out how to do a letter campaign. So went on listsource.com, spent, I don't know, probably a month at work, because remember, my work was not that stimulating. So I'd finish all my work within the first hour of a day. And I pulled a list of 191 properties that fit my criteria. It was absentee owners within 3 zip codes. And those zip codes were between my work and my house, because I knew I would get burnt out. I was going to have a second child. So I didn't want to pick something up 50 minutes away, because I knew I was going to be hands-on with this. I didn't know what hands-on meant, but I knew I was going to be hands-on with it. I also wanted to be able to service them over my lunch break. So I dwindled it down to these 191 units, multifamily, had owned them for over 5 years so that they had some equity in them, so that they'd be more likely to sell. And this was in 2017. So the market was starting to come up, but I mean, it was probably 50% of what it is now. People thought it was starting to get hot, but it was
still a tough time to buy.
Still a tough time to buy. Well, I sat down one weekend, my young son in my arm, watched football, probably a beer in the other hand, and I just sat there and wrote letters. I hand wrote 191 letters. I put the envelopes together. And this is, I think people oftentimes try to hide when they're doing these campaigns. They put a PO box or trying to do some sort of fancy something on it. What I was trying to reverse engineer the piece of mail that I would open. And the piece of mail that I would open would have a real stamp on it. I would see it's from a local address. So I put my home address on there as my return address. I hand wrote their address out. And the reason why I put my home address, people are like, well, that's crazy. You're giving up some privacy. When you're sending a letter to somebody, you're already infringing on their privacy, and they're already taking a step back. Like, who the heck are you? Well, I already opened up that door, putting myself in a perceived weaker position, which opened up the conversation. They could do some due diligence on me. They could see where I lived, what my house was worth, how long I've owned it for. So they'd have like some fire to throw at me, which was actually a really good thing because I wanted just to get them on the phone and talking. Well, I think I had the stats somewhere, but I got like 13 or 14 calls off these 191 letters and I got 7 deals out of it.
Wow.
Once again, had no clue what I was doing. I also sent them off on Friday so that they could hit on Monday. And why that's important is people are in business mode Monday, Tuesday. If letters start hitting near the weekend, there's 2 things that are going to happen. People aren't in business mode. And 2, it's surrounded by flyers. So your mail is going to get lost. People are going to be busy. They're just going to be disinterested. They're not going to jump on the phone. But, on a Monday, Tuesday, everybody's like, okay, it's work time. Need to go check the mail. Need to do that. So my phone started blowing up. So I'm stepping out of meetings left and right, having conversations, no clue what to do. But what I did know is that people, especially successful people, which I assumed most of these were, at least more successful than me, love to talk about themselves. So I just sat there and listened. Just listen. Tell me about your stories. Tell me about real estate. Educate me. I'm new to this. And just told them, I have the capability of purchasing up to, I think it was like $800,000 worth of properties or $1 million worth of real estate, something like that, based on the equity in my pre-approvals. And I started going to properties. One of them was great, and it kind of, I think, is why you don't give up when you get told no. 99 no's and a yes is still yes at the end of the day. And I think lots of people give up right away. I could have given up when the agent said no and everybody said no. I mean, the first 4 months was just nothing was happening, but I was working 100 hours a week on getting 0 results. But what I found is that the results you get are from the past work you have done, depending on like what you are projecting for the future. So in my vision was a long-term vision to create enough wealth and passive income that if I get hit by the proverbial bus, my family is taken care of. That means I wasn't looking for quick cash. That wasn't mean I was trading time for dollars. I was building something for the future. So I was always trying to remind myself of like, okay, this is for the future. But I ended up closing on my first property on April 24th of 2017. And ever since then, I've had a property under contract. I almost went an entire day and locked something up at 11 o'clock at night. This was like 4 years ago. So always had a property under contract. And I think, I just want to jump into this like 4-step process, which I didn't even know was a process, but I've spoken on it a few times. But I think it's critical for anybody that's stuck out there and really like is desperate to make a change, but has 0 connections, 0 clue what to do, doesn't know where to start. This is what I did. And this is before I, started getting all guru-y, with saunas, cold plunges, listen to motivational speeches and, talking about mindset and breathing and meditation. First thing I would do every morning. So we all have negative self-talk in the morning. Maybe not you, John. You seem like a real positive guy, but every morning there's negative self-talk. So I told myself the first thing I'm doing in the morning is I'm writing in a journal, I'm reading something, or I'm putting something in my ears that's either educational or positive. Like the second I wake up, I'm not going to let my mind wander, not a second. And I was going to wake up also between 5 and 6 a.m. You just have to wake up earlier because the next important piece is you have to get exercise. And the reason why you have to do it in the morning doesn't mean you can't do it again at night. The reason you have to do it in the morning is if you don't do it in the morning, you're going to spend maybe 5 to 50 times during the day thinking about you have to go to the gym later in the day. And that's wasted space in your head. Yep. Also, you're not revving your engine. And also you're not getting rid of all that, the cortisol and all basically the anxiety. So you need to work out first thing in the morning. And this is, once again, for people that are getting started, I still work out first thing in the morning and do these things, but especially when you're getting started, because I can't tell you how many times I'd be on the way to the gym and say, man, you're an idiot. Just be happy with your 6-figure job and shut up. Like, what are you doing? Like, stop. But I would have positive things on in the background. I had bigger pockets. The third thing to do is do something new every day that is towards your goal. So if it is real estate, day one, call an agent, analyze a deal, do something like that. Now, the 4th step is absolutely the hardest, but it's super attainable. You're going to stack those new items on top of each other. So say the first day you analyzed a deal. Cool. Well, the next day you're going to call an agent. Okay, cool. But on that second day, you're also going to analyze a deal. The third day, you're going to meet with an insurance broker. Okay, so you're meeting with an insurance broker, you're meeting with an agent, and you're analyzing a deal. And you stack these things for 30 days. So what I began to realize is a disciplined person does the same thing every day. That people that are in the top 1% will do the same thing every day. Most people can't do the same thing every day because it's boring. They get undisciplined. They say it doesn't matter. And then they fall down this bad train. If you can stack this and just do it for 30 days, you've completed, I think, 455 tasks. That is that's like almost 1.5 years equivalent to what the disciplined person can accomplish. So like I would attribute that first like 30 to 60 days of me on this road of creating the like exponential gains that came later. So so really dived into it, started a meetup group. The reason I started a meetup group is the meetup group that was out here would meet Monday nights. They would serve cold coffee and cookies, and it was at an elementary school gymnasium. Not really my vibes. Nobody was allowed to speak. So I said, well, I guess I'm going to start one. So posted on Facebook, hey, I've got a 4-plex. Anybody wants to bring a 12-pack and a pizza? Walking through it. 16 people.
You did this, and I'm going to cut you off here in a second.
Please.
You did this with one 4-plex. You started your own meetup.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. I do want to hit pause there really quick because everyone listening, you can tell Collin is a very energetic person. You got a ton of energy. What you just said in 16 minutes was, I mean, that's a 3-hour episode of how to get in the real estate, how to live your life better. Really. I mean, it's fun. There's so many things I can get into, and this show's not about me, but
it's always about you, John. It's always about you.
I was talking to a buddy yesterday, a good friend of mine, who's trying to get in the space. And we're talking about just kind of time blocking, figuring out when the best time to do things are, to try to get in the real estate. And everything you just said was what we talked about yesterday. I was like, dude, he gets up at, sometimes it's like 3:30 in the morning. I'm like, you work out. After you work out, you need to time block at least an hour to do your real estate, because that's when you're most productive in your day. You just got your workout in, which is awesome. I'm assuming he's feeling like what you said, fill yourself with positive thoughts. But after that, like your cup is full. So that's when you need to do your most productive stuff, which is what you just said, which is awesome, man. That was great. I do want to ask, how long were you in the corporate world?
So the 9-to-5 world, 4 years.
4 years. Okay. And you are and it's funny, everybody that is somewhat, I don't even say somewhat, that's very successful is very intentional. And you are a very intentional person. Like everyone listening can tell that. And you just take action. So it seemed like, and I don't know the timeline, but obviously everything's still very vivid for you with those turning points, right? You remember that guy's timer on his desk, 1,000 days till retirement. It's those little things that I'm sure just drove you to like, this is it. I'm done working this job. I'm taking action and doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, when things are going good, they're going good. But and I think this is something else that's important is, I didn't realize, but visualization, I just was able to, in that moment, picture myself 30 years older and not taking a chance on myself and missing my kids growing up. Having to tell my kids, no, I can't be there because I have to work. I don't miss their practices now. I coach to all their sports, and it's because I have that flexibility. I would say, and we talked about this, that we may be working 40 or 50 hours a week, but mentally we're probably working another 40 to 50 hours. The true entrepreneur doesn't turn it off. And, now I realize like it's nothing like I would have expected. If you would have told me 7 years ago, I'd have this many units, X amount of income, et cetera, coming in, I'd be like, cool. How's the beach life? Like, how's it being retired? It would have been a totally different vision. But what I've realized too is like, it's not in the destination. It is in the journey. And like, I go back to that place of like building the business, and when every day was something new, and it was freaking fun. Like, it is just fun. Like those things, when you're doing that, when you don't know what you're doing and you're having to problem solve things you've never problem solved before, it's one of the most exhilarating things you can do. And I think for anybody like struggling to like break out of the golden handcuffs or the corporate career, it's like, there is a job out there for you if you quit. Like if you are highly motivated and have intelligence, even just a low level in any area, you can find another job. And the thing you can't have is your time back, because I started when I had, was about to have 2 kids. I realized it was going to continue to get exponentially more difficult to start. One, just because getting older, your energy levels reduce. Like you get more stressed, you have more bills, and then you have more kids and you have more responsibilities. So like you should start as soon as possible, but you also should have a plan. It took me a year before I quit my job, which honestly was pretty quickly. And it was based on my wife telling me, well, she was sick of me complaining about my job basically every day. And she texted me one day at work and she's like, "Are you going to do it today?" I was like, "F it. All right." And I went and did it that day. So awesome. I think you just have to, but you have to have that laser focus, and you have to understand. I was listening to Patrick Bet-David today, and, he's talking about visualization. They talk about visualization. Okay, I've got the mansions, I've got the cars, 20 years, I have this, I've got the perfect wife, I've got all the vacations, family's happy. That's kind of motivating if that's your thing. Most of us are motivated more by fear. And I think instilling in yourself of like, what if I do nothing? What does my life look like in 20 years? Yep. What if I stay the same? What is my life going to be like in 20 years? And if you're not happy with that answer, you need to make some changes.
Yep. 100%. You said problem solving is exhilarating to you. I don't know that everyone can say that. I see that in a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think that's probably a common trait with entrepreneurs, because that's what we like to do, is solve problems. Do you run into other people? Do you think that's a common trait, or is that entrepreneurial trait?
I mean, it's definitely an entrepreneurial trait. I mean, it's what is there? Fight, flight, and freeze. And I've been in some, other situations. I mean, we just had a massive tornado the other day, 52 of them. And, there's some people that flight. There's some people that stay still, don't know what to do. And there's some people that fight. And I think that goes with everything in life. And I'm not sure. I feel most things can be trained. I just think that's a difficult one to be trained. I think it takes discipline and both physical and mental fitness to have that ability to fight. But yeah, I don't like lots of problems, but I like some problems. And I realize that a problem doesn't go away by just ignoring it. Alex Hormozi says this, the first time you have a problem, it's a big problem and you just stew on it. You don't know what to do, and it consumes your day, it consumes your week, it consumes your month. Like a bad employee. It's like, oh God, what am I going to do with this? If I fire him, blah, blah, blah. Well, once you've dealt with that situation 100 times, it's no longer a problem. It's just like a common operating procedure. You just know what to do. You have certain systems, you have certain standards that you know how to go through this obstacle. Like at the beginning, it's like, how do I write a purchase agreement? How do I get an operating agreement? I just spinning my wheels for days. How do I negotiate? How do I set up due diligence periods? How do I find the money? All these are really big problems at the beginning, but the only way that they don't become problems is that you actually tackle them head on and you learn from those items so that the next time they could become easier and easier and easier.
Yep. That's very well said. So let's pick back up your story. You had one fourplex, and this was in 17, and you decided to start a meetup that's turned into 6,000 people. Take us from there.
Yeah. So I guess, a little bit about the meetup journey is I saw there was something that I wanted that didn't exist. So I said, maybe there's other people like me out there. And I said, what's the worst that can happen? It cost me no money. It cost me a little bit of time. Why not give it a try? Well, 16 people showed up. Next month, we did it at a buddy's property. 30 people showed up. So I said, cool, I'm going to throw it at a bar, because I'd like to have a beer on a Wednesday night. Because Mondays nights is the worst time to have any meeting. Sorry, just anybody hosting a meetup, don't do it Monday night. That's horrible. Yeah. Nobody wants to do that. Everybody's busy. Everybody's worn out from the day. So I said, I'm going to have it on Wednesday. Sure enough, 60 people showed up. And, before COVID, we were getting, 180 members or so. But I built it around the Facebook group I created probably a year into it, just because I once again, I'm kind of dumb when it comes to that stuff, but I knew that I needed to put something out there to actually like talk about the meetup and allow a forum, which is an incredibly active forum. I think we have 100 member requests a week.
Wow.
Yeah. But I wanted to create a place where people could transact freely. I don't charge for the meetup. I have no interest in edifying myself through the meetup. Now, I know that that is a byproduct of it, that I am the guy that runs the meetup, that owns the units. So there is something great that comes with that. I have a meetup group that has 6,000 members. I can ask one question of where's a contractor or this, and I get 6,000 people and looking at it. But I really wanted to create something where I brought on people that could truly educate without the sales pitch, that could help individuals, and where people could transact, do off-market deals, and really grow their business. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of still what it is. So, but kind of further on my journey, I kept doing more deals that year. I mean, have you ever been in the zone before where everything's the flow state? Have you ever been in the flow state?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Are you in the flow state now?
Right now, listening to you, absolutely. I think everybody is.
Yeah. I love it, man. We all go through, and I think, I was listening to Ed Milet. You can only really hold on to the flow state for like max 6 months, maybe 9 months. Yep. It's where everything feels easy. It's where problems are just, you just move on and look for solutions. You don't dwell on issues. And that first, 6, 9 months is maybe even the first year, I was in such a flow state where everything that I read, I did, and I tried, and I was just in such a good mood all the time, working 18 hours a day. I mean, my wife laughs about it, but anytime I'd say, let's go for lunch, she knew I was going in a place I was looking at properties. So we'd get a quick bite, we'd throw it on the stroller, and we'd walk around, and I'd be looking up addresses, searching for the owners and calling them, and, trying to make off-market deals. But I guess an important part that I did not bring up is something that I've always ran to, and this is, the problems thing is, early on, I realized everybody hates their property manager if they're using third parties. They always have complaints. Nobody likes to property manage. And it is one of the most important, if not the most important, essential thing for real estate to become successful. So I had realized I had always managed people my entire life. I dealt well with conflict, mainly interpersonal conflict. I always made it I wouldn't call it a game, but basically a game. When I worked at the grocery store, you get some really upset people about something, or just any of the retail jobs I worked. My job was, I was always called upon to take upon the hardest individual that was, threatening lawsuits. Mm-hmm. And I would listen, I would appease, and I would still get my way that was beneficial for the company, while making they felt like they won, because they wanted to be listened. They wanted to get their point across. So I knew, I was like, okay, I'm going to manage my own properties, because this is going to give me my basically golden parachute of stability within the real estate. So I started managing all my own assets. I figured out Buildium, QuickBooks, all those types of tools on my own, not knowing what I was doing. I didn't know that reconciling your books actually means you have to pull up your bank statement. So there was some trial and error there, and that's when I started hiring people. But I would partner with people along the way. So some individuals would either find a property, or they'd bring all the money, but they didn't want to manage it. So they'd bring me on. So I'd manage it. I'd take a 10% flat fee. There's no payroll or anything. And I was running it all. I was doing all the leasing. I was handling all the maintenance calls. I was handling all the PM software, all the bank accounts, all the reporting. And what that led to is, after, close to or less than a year, that February of 2018, I was making about $6,000-$7,000 a month in income from my property management company. And that's what gave me the stability to quit. But also what I found is that I was able to move a lot faster on my real estate than most. I didn't even know what BRRRR was. The first time I did a refinance was because I had a property under contract and needed to find $130,000 and did not have $130,000, and thought that I raised my property's values, and it actually came out to within like $800 and came in 2 days before closing. But what I found is, being in property management, you can move a lot faster. You can be a lot more nimble. and you can complete the business plan faster. And in this business, time is the biggest thing working against you. Vacancy, the cost of time to turn a unit, you are always paying money. Interest is always accruing. Insurance and taxes are always being paid. There's utilities always on. The faster you can handle the things, the more successful you be. The people that fail are the ones that are too slow to turn units, too slow to lease out units, too slow to make a decision. So anybody in this business, you either got to be an operator or partner with an operator. And that's where I just decided I'm going to go the hardest, crappiest route and become a property manager. And ended up growing that to about 1,300 rental units that I was in-house managing. And then recently just partnered with another group to merge the company so I could kind of take a step back, more of like a board seat, and have them operate it, but allow us to scale and continue to build our in-house property management company.
That makes sense. So I want to back up a little bit. There's so much there. I'm not going to try to, I guess, summarize any of that. So you guys, I would highly recommend to re-listen to all that. Because being in charge of your own operations absolutely makes you more nimble and able to burr if you need to. It just does a lot of benefits. But I want to get back to you and I find, or at least found deals the same way. And I come from the outside sales world, and it sounds like you weren't in sales at all, but you are absolutely a salesman. You were your goal was to get appointments with these owners, and then you just tried talking their story, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that just builds confidence. So talk a little bit about that. Where did you learn that, for one?
That's a good question. I was an only child, so maybe I was talking to myself a lot, or just really excited to talk to somebody since I was an only child. I'm trying to process that as I get older. I think a lot of it, I was always pretty outgoing in high school, became somewhat oddly popular with every click. But, my job that I worked at the grocery store, I looked at it as it was kind of a new beginning for me when I moved out to Nebraska. And I took on this idea that whatever I do is how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it the best that I can, whatever the job is. My first job was, I was a bouncer and bar back at night, get off at 2 a.m. and then I'd be at Starbucks at 5:30. So this is a dude with a bachelor's degree. It's 2007, 2008, slinging coffee, a barista. But I said, you know what? I'm just going to do this job perfectly. And what's the worst that can happen? And, I got promoted a month later. But what it did is it put me in an environment that I saw thousands of people a day that I had to speak with. And I realized that, the more energy I brought, the better I did with customers and my fellow employees, the faster I climbed the ladder. And also it made just life a lot easier. Like you have two options. I've got, if I get a tattoo, this will be it. But there's two things you can control every day. There's really three, but the two that I like to focus on, and I have it written down every morning, is your effort and your attitude. Yep. Your effort. You can choose to do something or you can choose to not do something. That's your effort, but you have a choice there. And your attitude, the same thing, the same problem that people could see as a problem, you could see as an opportunity. So understanding that, I decided to put effort into everything I did, because regardless of the situation, I had to be there if I wanted to make money. So I was going to put effort into it because I'm there anyways. And then the attitude was I could either shy away from these confrontations or I could go full bore into it. I could either be, what is it? The cow and the buffalo. The cow runs away from the storm. The buffalo runs through it because they know that on the other side, the storm is not there. It's the same thing with problems. Problems linger on because you choose not to address them. It's painful to address problems, but once you address them, then the hard part is over with. So I really think it was just working in that business. And plus I moved out to a place I didn't know anybody, so I could kind of reinvent myself in that standpoint. So, I think just moving, I was ready to grow up and not do the same thing. And I said, hey, don't really care what everybody else thinks. I don't know anybody. So I'm going to create the vision of myself that I want it to be. And kind of that's what I did when I started real estate. I was like, there are other people out there that are doing this. Why not me?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know any of those people, but I'm reading about them and it seems possible. So why not me? Why is everybody, why is the, the bucket of crabs, once a crab starts getting out, all the other crabs start pulling you down. And that was some of the initial commentary when I started on my real estate journey. I remember one of the guys at my work was like, you really want to give up this gravy train? That's crazy. Or, be careful. Be careful. People lose all the time. And they're not wrong, but it's a choice. It's a choice. Sure, bad situations can come up, deals go sideways, but it's your choice of just accepting that or continuing to move forward.
Yep. Well, and society's kind of taught us that too, right?
Yes.
I mean, we could dive into schools for probably 3 hours.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's where we're taught kind of that mindset, right? And it sticks with us for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. How many kids do you have?
Got 2.
Yeah.
Our kids are around the same ages.
Yeah. So, I've got a 4, 6, and 8-year-old. So what are you doing? I know this is your podcast, but what are you doing to instill some of those things? Because it's interesting. Some of the conversations my son's 8, going to be 9. And but there's all these different pressures and these different things and these different normalcies, which I'm trying to unnormalize for him. And, he sees it with what we have and also how I work. I'm not at the bar every night. That's not something that interests me. I work, I'm on the phone, or I'm hanging out with them. Or I'm going to the gym. Those are the 3 things I'm doing. So, trying to have them associate themselves of the ability to think differently, recognize patterns, not just memorization, but patterns, but also that you reap what you sow. Effort matters.
Yep.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you're teaching your kids?
Man, it's tough because especially, so I've daughter's 10 and son is coming up on 7, but daughter's getting to the age where it's harder to hold her attention on what I want to talk about. So it's getting tougher. But yeah, just trying to slip things in here and there on, it's hard, man. It's hard. Fortunately, we're in a very good school system, which is good, but there's still habits that I want them to get away from with that. I think for me, it's harder with, I'm at home. I work at home. And even during the summer, like my schedule's pretty loose. I'm not truly working 40 hours a week. I'll work a few hours in the morning, maybe a few hours in the afternoon. And it's kind of like what you said. I'm always working in my head, but it's sporadic too.
Yep.
So they didn't see the complete grind of working from 6:30 in the morning till 3:30. And then I would coach basketball afterwards. They didn't see that grind. And then also renovating houses, single family rentals that I had. They didn't see that grind. So for me, that's the bigger thing is there are people that are working 9 to 5 or more, right? My wife worked 12-hour shifts. They never saw that.
Yeah.
Those are the things that it's like, how do I instill in them that, hey, this isn't everyday life. Not every mom and dad stays home and is home at all times. That's been harder for me. And we'll see. You don't know how your kids are going to turn out, but that is my challenge, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree because, I mean, I'm sure similar to you, the beginning stages are hard because you can't escape any of the work. You have not enough capital to hire resources. You don't know what you're doing, so you wouldn't even know what to do with those resources. There's no real scalability in what you're doing. So you're doing everything, everything all the time. And you're probably doing it, with 10 times the effort because you haven't done it before. And yeah, that is a concern because, it's, by all means, we have a good life. Not something I was, aware of when I was a kid. And I think that, probably drove me to get to where I am because I wanted something different.
Well, that's the thing. That's what, and I skipped over that, but the drive, right? We all come from something from our childhood and, going forward that drove us. My guess is most of us we didn't have silver spoons. So I had a good childhood, grew up. We lived in a nice house all the time, but money was definitely tight. And I think that's been instilled in me. Like, I don't want to be in that position. I don't want money to be tight. So how do we carry that on to our kids is what I'm trying to figure out.
I don't know. What's his name? Joe DeSena, the guy that created the Spartan race. I think he takes kids for a week and just like puts them through like a tough boot camp. So maybe we do that with our kids. It's up in New Hampshire. Yeah. He'll just he'll put them through the ringer. So I think it's something like that.
I've always thought to have like a kids mastermind. Actually, we've got a group. It's called LFG, which I've talked about on here before. But there's one guy that's brought 2 of his kids. Actually, we've had 2 or 3 kids that have come. They're like between 17 and 20 years old, which is awesome to see them in a room with entrepreneurs and talking about stuff that I'm sure they understand 5% of, but it opens their minds. I would love to have like a teenager mastermind group. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I would say if I have a BHAG, it's which I do, it's to fix education for the youth, and I know that's a massive goal, but to your point, I love that idea. I think sports really helps. And I wrestled in high school. I was average at best. Team sports are great. There's a lot you learn from team sports, but I also think individual sports bring out a certain level of character that you can't hide from. Meaning that, my son was wrestling and numerous times he's wanted to quit, numerous times. And, quit in the middle of practice, quit after he loses a match at a tournament. And my answer has always been, you can quit after you win. Like you go and win, you can quit, or at the end of the season, but you quit after you win. And I ask him every single time he wins, do you want to quit now? And 100% of the time, it's like I haven't even asked the question. He's ignoring it because it's so ridiculous. Of course, he doesn't want to quit. He just won. Like he just got the success of it. And it's, I think creating those like internal disciplines, because at the end of the day, like everything we do is based around discipline. Do you get up early? Do you eat right? Are you saying the right things? Are you thinking the right things? Are you, being kind versus being an asshole? Like, are you taking care of your problems? But it's all related to just discipline.
It is. That's the biggest thing. Man, I talk to other friends and I'm like, if our kids have any type of nuts and discipline, like they're going to rule the world. Because I think people have just this is a longer discussion, but I think people have just gotten soft, and that entails everything. And I think discipline is definitely one of those. And you have to be disciplined. If you're not disciplined, you're going to struggle.
Yeah. You just gotta do it. Like if you don't like to go to the gym, I can't remember who I heard this, but person wanted to lose weight, go to the gym. Well, he would just make the person drive to the gym, do 1 set, and then go home. Don't do any more. Don't get sore. Just build up the discipline of doing it. Atomic Habits is great. I don't remember 99.9% of what he says in there, and everybody loves the book. But there is one thing that he does, and it's kind of the cues for the next morning. So to ensure, a couple of years ago, I got really out of shape. It was like in the grind of business. I was working a lot, eating incredibly unhealthy. I was waking up every 2 hours to answer emails for 2 hours. And it was after COVID. I ballooned up like 40 pounds overnight. My wife has 3 kids, loses 10 pounds. And I'm the guy that, put on all the weight for both of us. And I knew I had to make some changes. So besides, looking at, blood panels and everything, one of the things that I knew is like, I just had to get up and do something. And I was like in a bad rut of not doing it. But James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, I would make sure that I'd put all my clothes out by my bedside, because I'd realized there were some days I'd wake up a little late, then I couldn't find my clothes, and then I'd miss the gym. And I was like, oh, it's too late. Well, too bad. Well, the night before I put that out, I have my lemon water right beside my bed. Mm-hmm. I have every single thing, my protein drink out, make sure my AirPods are there. I'd make sure everything's ready to go so that it's a seamless transition. And I think if you can set yourself up that way in multiple areas of your life, whether it's being prepared for a meeting, just having some order in your life of that, and just like sequentially doing things, that will help you become disciplined, because it's the chaos and it's those like repetitive thoughts in your head of like, where's my clothes? I don't think people realize how much like valuable real estate those stupid decisions are costing you.
No.
I mean, you could be thinking about something useful.
Yep.
And we all go through the bad tailwinds, and it's like, why was I thinking about that for an hour? That was a waste of time. But if you can just get rid of some of those things and remove the resistance, life becomes a lot easier.
No, you're right, man. That's such good stuff. And It's very easy to compare working out to how disciplined you are or can be. I mean, I struggled with it. I remember telling, and I played basketball through junior year of college, and so it was like I've been working out forever, right? Training and all that, and then afterwards, after that, for probably I don't know 5 to 8 years, it's like why should I work out? Like I have no drive, I have nothing to work out for, right? But I also knew that it was good for you. So eventually, I realized I need to work out. I'm going to work out, and it was hard to get that momentum going. But it was kind of like what you said: just get to the gym. Don't worry about getting sore. Do one set. And I just started off slow, and then just stacking days. And then I think I started with even like I had a calendar and just seeing how many X's I could get in a row on days that I worked out. It's little things like that. But that has also allowed other areas of my life to become disciplined too. Just that one thing, it probably just builds confidence, right? It's like I can be disciplined in this one area, so now I can apply that somewhere else.
Yeah, it's crazy. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
Yep,
I mean, it's
100%.
and we all go through bad spells, at least most of us do. And it's like, man, I ate like shit or drank too much or did this or stayed up too late or, I avoided taking that call or I avoided doing that email. But it's like, okay, it just starts with one. Just like, it gets really hard as like, I mean, probably for you and certainly for me, it's like so overwhelming sometimes. And it's like, okay, just how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Like seriously, like the tornado this weekend, dude, you just look around and everything's just ravaged. And it's just like, dude, where do you even start? And it's like, okay, like, I mean, especially because the whole state's like freaking out. Like there's no real plan in place. Like you can't have a plan. I mean, sure, you can send in people, but like, there's no real, like, there's not a lot of case studies on what to do when there's 52 tornadoes and take out a bunch of neighborhoods. And it's like, okay, I started thinking about it. I was like, okay, what can I do? I was like, all right, neighbors over there, they're in bad shape. Okay. So what am I going to do? It's like, they don't need water. Like there's plenty of water. They don't need my condolences. They don't need me to ask them how they're doing or if they need something. Like, sure, I can do that in passing, but they don't need that. They don't need my text messages. Yep. What they need is their car to be cleared from their garage and stuff to be cleared out of their house so they can get moved. So it's like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to call the dozen guys I know. I'm going to get a dumpster trailer there. I'm going to throw on gloves. I'm going to go get sweaty and work for 12 hours. Like, it's just like, it's awesome. You just got to move like one piece at a time for like the thing that is causing the block. Like, and if the thing that's causing the block is making that phone call, if it's your health or your fitness, if it's any of those things, you gotta start with the root issue. I know Brandon Turner was talking about the podcast that he did with one of the guys from Jackass, I believe.
Yeah, that was a good one. What's his name?
I can't remember, but basically, he had a really bad, lots of addictions, and lifts up his shirt, and he puts
Brandon
Novak and puts no more effing heroin on his stomach because every single problem in his life was related to that one thing, and nothing would get fixed until that one thing was handled. So I think lots of people are avoiding the one thing in their life, bad relationship, bad job, anything like that, that if they handle that, which is really difficult, everything opens up to them.
Yeah. That's a great point. That's awesome, man. This has been awesome. So I want to kind of summarize kind of your journey, and then I've got a few questions, but it sounds like you were able to start in real estate investing. Obviously, we understand your drive and your energy. We get that. But it sounds like you're able to use a HELOC, I'm assuming, to start purchasing small multifamily, and then you bird, which is basically getting equity out in cash to put into more deals.
Yep.
And then you started a meetup and you started meeting new people. You started doing property management, right? And then you JV'd and grew exponentially that way. Is that
and I mean, we didn't even get into the syndication process. We've done 22 syndications, raised about 60 million. And we've gone full cycle on about 60 projects. That's awesome. Returning 100% capital. So we'll save that for part 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in basically 7 years?
Yep.
2,400 units. It's insane, dude. It's insane.
And we've got about 1,000 units under contract right now.
Unreal. So 3,400. Sorry. Left that out.
It's nothing's done until it's closed. There's plenty of things to blow up every deal. So
no,
I even hesitate saying it. So
yep. No, I get it. That's awesome, man. This has been an awesome show. So got 3 questions here. What's one thing that you're better at than everybody else?
I thought you were gonna ask me the one question you asked at the mastermind.
For
those 3 questions.
This is a somewhat family-friendly show.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. I apologize for my language earlier.
No. You're good.
You bleep it out.
We just can't go down that path.
Yeah. What's one thing that I think I'm better? I think, you can take a piece of paper and you draw a dot from the top and the bottom and you draw a line through. And that's how typically people go through life. I'm the guy that folds the paper over and just goes right through the middle. And what I've found is that I can see certain things in people and then problems that are occurring. And I'm really good at connecting those individuals and finding common ground between those people. Sometimes it's myself, sometimes it's others to create different partnerships.
Got it. That's awesome, man. So this is, and I was just thinking about this as you were talking. This is kind of a 2-part question. What drives you now? Because obviously you're fine. Like, I'm assuming you have to work another day in your life, but you're highly motivated. What drives you, and then what's next for you?
There's a lot that drives me. I think when people ask what the end game is, I never really have a good answer. I can give a lot of different reasons to keep going. There's just so much in this world that can be accomplished. And I feel if you're one of the lucky ones that has the capability and drive to do it, you should. Mm-hmm. If it's for the betterment of individuals, creating other jobs, people also ask, what do you want? And what I want is on my deathbed for my kids to say that they liked me, and that I was a good dad. That's important to me. And I think those things, I'm not a perfect father, not at all. But I think those things occur by continually making yourself a better individual by doing hard things. And sometimes those hard things are through business. Sometimes those hard things are through, creating philanthropic adventures, whatever that is. But I'm just not a person that's happy that's standing still. I feel that it's selfish to be wasteful in that way. Not saying you can't relax and chill out, but I think you should always strive to be productive. And that doesn't mean to go make a bunch of money. That just means you could bring joy to people. You could do whatever you want. But I think that being productive is so important. Because if you're not, you're really just taking from everybody else.
Yeah. That was awesome, man. What's next for you?
What's next? Like I said, we've got a bunch of projects coming up under contract, really trying to rebrand and get the meetup going again. That is something that I fizzled out for a while. I think I got burnt out about a year ago. And so now putting a lot of effort in bringing in really, really good speakers, focusing on that. I got a bunch of cool things in the works. Trying to continue to elevate the people that I'm chatting with and be more conscientious with my time. There was a point where my life was meeting overrun, and I still have a lot of meetings. Trying to focus on clearing those up, creating more accountability for my people, and get back to the basics and solve the real core issues so that I can continue to grow my business. I would say the past while I've been in more of an adding phase rather than a multiplying phase, and starting to realize that there are possibilities to kind of multiply both my business and myself, and kind of the communities, and just focusing on some of those bigger things, taking a step back to really think of not how do you go from 1 to 2, but how do you go to 1 to 200.
Yep. That's cool, man. Last one, where can people find you?
On Instagram, Collin C. Schwartz. On Facebook, on LinkedIn. I don't really check it I do have a TikTok account, but I'm not on TikTok, but I do have a profile on there. Oh, and YouTube. My social media guy says to go to my YouTube because that's the new big thing. So I put shorts out there and a bunch of other content. So, yep.
It's awesome, man. Awesome. This has been an awesome show. I feel like I'm still in my flow state, just
Nice.
being on here with you. So appreciate you coming on. Appreciate all the knowledge you dropped, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for following, subscribing, and listening to this episode of the Do More podcast hosted by John Farling. To learn more or ask questions, go to l4investing.com.